I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And I'm one of them ginger snap werewolves.
Is there a surplus of ginger snap werewolves
Weren't
out there?
they like teenage girls?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were.
I'm the man version.
Gotcha.
I see.
I don't know. It just comes to me.
Hey,
comes to me.
Whatever floats your boat, man.
Exactly. Well, welcome, y'all. We're going to do a ghost mail today.
Ghost mail.
We are currently also live streaming for the Parajunkies right now.
We do that every episode.
We do. And Elle just said International Whale Shark Day is tomorrow. So
Ooh, whale sharks.
We are filming this on August 29th, so that will be August 30th. I love whale sharks. They're super cool.
Elle, when's
Happy
your birthday?
Whale Shark Day.
When's your birthday, Elle? Maybe we should do on our birthday. We should do like an animal conservation episode where we
could just do like crazy cryptid.
Yeah,
episodes.
crazy cryptid episodes, and then have like a link to
or even
donate
more
intriguingly,
intriguingly, are cryptids that turned out to be real things.
Ooh.
Because I think the great panda was a cryptid for a little while there, and then they discovered them. Yeah, well, they're called them the ghost of the woods, and everybody thought
a panda.
Yeah, because nobody knew what they were.
But they topple over.
Well, they're giant, but imagine looking into the woods and seeing this white thing with two big black eyes just sitting in the woods, and it's 7 feet tall.
All right, so Elle's birthday is March 4th, meaning on March 4th, maybe we'll have a little conservation fun.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
like giant squid.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because giant squid, for a long time, people thought didn't exist. And now we have ample proof that they do.
And they will eat you with their big beaks.
Manja. I don't like that there's a beak in the middle of a squid. That just bothers me to no end. That is not how it works. You don't put a big squishy thing in the sea and give it a hard beak. That just bothers me.
How
And
else
make
is
it
it going to
lightning
crush?
fast.
Right. How else is it going to crush your skull, though?
Ideally, it wouldn't.
It's a kraken, though. It's got a...
It's kraken. It's a kraken.
So...
Love giant squid. We should do a giant squid episode.
completely
because
agree.
I remember the first time I saw a video from deep ocean video of the giant squid. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because again, in my lifetime, it went from being sea story myth to, oh yeah, these exist. I'm like, oh, all right.
I thought you were going to say, I remember the first time I saw a giant squid.
Oh, no.
And I'm
No.
like, well, of course you've seen a giant squid.
Yeah,
I
of
have yet
course.
to witness with my own eyes a giant squid.
But
So, Madison, let's go ahead and thank the new Parajunkies real fast.
all right, so let me pull it up real quick.
Oh, Elle, bring it.
Yeah.
Elle is going to give us an info dump on so many creatures.
She will, too.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
all about it.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to thank Daniel Terrett, Dali Defa, Nathan Brown, Brandy McDonald, and Jessica G. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Welcome
for
to the
joining
Parajunkie
us.
fam. You want to join the Parajunkie fam, all you got to do is click the link down below, and you can see the different tiers, and we have discounts for yearly tiers. It's very fun.
And we can interact with you while we are producing our shows.
Absolutely. Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We also have the spirit chat running while we're doing this as well. The last episode we were just filming, it was pretty interactive and on topic the whole time. So
It really did. It was almost as if it was commenting on what we were saying, and not in a way of like we're trying to communicate with us. It's like, oh, well,
Right.
that's very interesting. It's like, so the ghosts are just sitting back and learning some things.
yeah. Well, it just gave us On a Bridge, which I think I've got a ghostie in my midst that I picked up on a bridge. So, interesting.
I was about to say,
yeah.
We were just talking about your bridge ghost and little friend, my friend.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's the ghost that's been so talkative this morning.
I could totally see it. It's been very interactive. So, yeah. But nonetheless, let's talk about your
keep
ghost.
listening for whistles.
Right. Listen for whistles. So gong. It's a gong.
And that's why we drink.
Oh yes. So one other announcement before we get into your ghost stories. We had there's a little bit of a change of plans with our episode that we're collaborating with, and that's why we drink. On. So basically, they have their new book that's coming out and they're going on tour. So very, very busy right now. And we're going to be postponing our episode with them to October 3rd. So it is no longer now in August. It is going to be October 3rd, which honestly going to be great for spooky season.
Spooky season.
And it will be live at 4 p.m.
Yes.
And that live is going to be only for Parajunkies. So it is going to be a private live. So if
What day of the week is that? Is it a Wednesday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
I think it's a Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
It's also Mean Girls Day. So
Mean Girls Day.
You won't forget it. Because just ask yourself, what day is today? Oh, it's October 3rd. So there you go.
That's funny.
But yeah. But just
For those of you who quote Mean Girls.
I mean, who doesn't think of October 3rd and think of Mean Girls? Or maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Maybe it's just you.
It's okay.
Why she Tina?
You go.
Why she Tina Fey, Daddy?
Bruh.
Boom. There it is.
There it is.
So, hold on. Real quick before we get into it. Courtney said, didn't they find a megalodon recently?
I don't know if they found it. There is a hubbub about it.
Right.
But I don't know that they found it. There certainly is conversation about it.
Yes. So, all right. First one is going to be from Marcus. And this isn't really a story, but it is a photo. So
Boom.
It said, I was just wondering what you see in our window. It's been a great debate for years. Here is the photo. And they said in the window.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. It looks like a man, a bearded man, a bearded man with a funny hat.
Yeah.
It actually looks like Henry the 16th.
No.
Right? Because doesn't it look like he has a sash
It does.
and a beard and kind of one of those jaunty berets?
Let me take a look at this. All right.
Yeah,
so it's up for
It
the
also
audience.
could be some kind of like British military, like old British military uniform.
It's intriguing. Yeah, because that definitely could be like a tartan over the shoulder. And
it's actually a photo
So
that
for everyone listening,
yes.
Now we're looking at it on the large screen. Yeah, it almost has like Elizabethan qualities, like a big poofy shoulders.
If you could
it's
zoom it out
interesting.
just a little bit, Jay. It's like one of those photos that when you look at it further out, it is more clear, but when it gets very close up,
It starts to pixelate. And,
Yeah. And essentially what we're looking at is a photo of a house and a snowy landscape. And in the window is what looks like a pretty white, translucent, misty figure of a man wearing a hat and...
feels like he has a beard, but
yeah.
it's kind of tricky the more you look at it. Although it does almost immediately look like a figure standing at the window.
Even though it is very evident that there is, I believe, at least curtains in the window or like a fog over the window of some capacity. Because you can't see into the house through the window.
And it's very possible that it's like a reflection of whatever is in the yard or whatever is, along the wall of the building. However, it strikes you almost immediately as And it kind of, and it did remind me of the Henry VIII.
Yeah.
The Henry VIII with the the turkey leg portrait,
Right. Awesome. Well,
All
it
right.
is a very interesting photo nonetheless, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you for sending
It's very
it in.
interesting.
Yes.
Oh, look closer.
Look closer.
What? No.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that what the spirit chat just
That's
said?
what Spirit Chat said.
Holy crap.
Look closer.
I don't know if I can look
Closer.
any closer.
Oh my Lord.
Creepy.
Okay.
But so thank you very much for sending that in. Our next one, I'm not sure if this person wants us to say their name, so I'll just read you the title of what they titled their email, which is Protection Symbols Tattoos. Hello, I'm an avid listener. In fact, I found this podcast a little over 2 years ago, and I have not stopped listening since. Just recently, I worked as an overnight baker at a local grocery chain, and this podcast kept me plenty company while I worked alone, so thank you for that.
I love that.
I love
hearing
that too.
stuff
That's
like
very
that.
sweet. So a real quick brief history on me. My father was a curandero. It's something that has been passed down from generation to generation going back to our indigenous roots. So understanding the paranormal was something that just came naturally to us. He would provide limpia ceremonies for people who needed them and would sometimes offer them to us when we felt like we needed to clear out some spiritual baggage. That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
When he was on his deathbed, we knew he wasn't going to make it because the nurse that was in charge of his room shared the same name as my grandmother, his mom. My little sister and I saw her name tag, and we just both knew he was in the process of crossing over. There was a flood of emotions going through me, and when he did cross over, I just remember feeling like a bomb went off, and a few people that were in the waiting room also were overcome with headaches or feeling sick. So I think it goes without saying he had a large radiant energy and spirit. Now on to the events that led to this ghost mail. I'm very excited to hear Chris's thoughts on this. A few years back, I would. Oh yes, that's my grandmother banging on the window. Thank y'all.
That's what she does.
She does that. A few years back, I was burning the candle at both ends. I was going through a recent breakup. I was going to culinary school full time and working 2 part-time jobs. One at a recreational cooking school, and other was at as a tattoo apprentice. I was burnt out in every sense of the word. Oftentimes, I would leave my house at 6 a.m. and get back at 12:30 a.m. just to wake up at 6 a.m. to do it all over again. This went on for months. Somewhere along the timeline of sleepless nights and overexhaustion, I found myself in one of the most vulnerable points of my life. Mentally, I felt compromised. Physically, I felt drained. This was the perfect storm for our old friend, the Hat Man, to come visit.
Oh, boy.
I was experiencing sleep paralysis every night, sometimes multiple times a night. It was to the point where I was scared to capitalize on the very little sleep that I was able to get. It didn't stop for months. One night that I can remember that I was able to get a full night's sleep was when I convinced my sister to stay in my room while I slept and wake me up if she could see or hear me struggling. It was the classic Nightmare on Elm Street plan. Luckily, my sister was a night owl, so she didn't have a problem with it. That night, the Hat Man didn't make an appearance. The night after that, he came back much more aggressive. I was tired of it, so I had the idea that maybe if I wear a protection symbol, it would go away. But I wanted to amp that up, so I tattooed 2 protection symbols on my leg. Solomon's 5th Pentacle of Mars and the Benedictine Cross. Again, I grew up in a very spiritual household, so I know what these symbols represent and how they are used. Since then, I have not had any visits of the Hat Man. Sometimes I feel the electric buzzing like he's coming, but it quickly goes away. Almost like he walks in and walks right out. One drawback of having these tattoos is that I feel like I am no longer in tune like I used to be. I used to feel and see things, now not so much. While I only got them to rid the Hat Man, I think they got rid of everything. Sometimes I feel like tattooing a line across them to break the seals because I can't feel my dad, grandma, great-grandma around anymore. However, there have been times where I've walked into situations that I've seen potentially dangerous, and either something pulls me away or something pulls the person or persons that would mean to do harm gets pulled away. So I feel like the seals are still very active. Just a quick, smaller story. I was in the highway and a car was speeding and cutting lanes right before they slammed into the car. Their wheel blew out. I thought they shot at me until I seen them slow down and pull over. So maybe I will keep them. LOL. Thanks for letting me tell my story. Keep doing wonderful things. And JT, I feel like you don't get enough love. Keep doing what you're doing. Often I find myself laughing, saying, "Dynamite, drop it, JT, LOL." Thank you all for reading again. Very nice. And I will convey that message when JT comes back from his excursion.
I think he's investigating the cardinal.
Yes.
So this is the double-edged sword of protection. Mm-hmm. When you seek protection, it does actually cut you off from a lot of paranormal and supernatural encounters. It is welcoming into your system, your belief that you are repellent to spirits. It's a wise decision if you are being tormented, but the exchange is you do tend to dampen the ability of spirits to make their presence known. You kind of walk into a haze, as it were, because a lot of times what a protection symbol does is it obscures you from these entities that are coming for you. It creates kind of a sort of a glowish field that they can't see through. So, yeah, there's a heartbreak to the idea that in order to protect yourself, you also have to close the door on loved ones who might be trying to communicate with you. But I dare say it's the proper choice if you are being any form of distress from a spirit, because any spirit that causes distress will escalate. It'll escalate that distress. It'll come back with more and more fervent energies. And I don't know if we ever talked about this on the podcast before, but I once was talking about Hat Man, and I said that Freddy Krueger is a Hat Man. Mm-hmm. He falls into all of that because of the nature of how scary it is for a shadowy figure with a hat to be sort of in your periphery or in your nightmare scenarios. And it's so interesting how often you see the symbolism of Hat Man, because we were talking about how in every neighborhood when I was growing up, there was the neighborhood watch sign. And the neighborhood watch sign, if you'll remember, is just the shadowy, cloaked hat figure that you're supposed to be watching out for.
Right,
it's supposed to be
lurking
this
in the
dangerous
shadows.
thing. So, the fact that imagery is so strong and prevalent in our society as the shady character that comes to you and creeps up on you. But yeah, no, I applaud your dedication getting tattoos of protective symbols. That's a big statement. That's hardcore, and that absolutely puts you in a category of will. When you start acting with that much will, it reinforces anything you do. That's what I always say, that the reason why we have rituals is to reinforce the action of the ritual, the purpose of the ritual. It's bringing it to light. So an action like permanently marking yourself with protective symbols should offer you great protection, and that protection, it sounds like it's doing you good. It sounds like it's keeping you away from potentially dangerous situations and potentially dangerous spirits. But like I said, the double-edged sword is you may lose some of the comfort spirits along the way. And not to say that there's not other ways to communicate with those spirits. It's just you're going to have to find a new way to commune with the benevolent spirits in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, it's especially because those are such powerful symbols that you chose, which obviously it sounds like you're
well chosen.
You're aware of that. And so it makes sense that it would have just put a dampening on everything, you know, because it's actually not tattooing necessarily, but it is fairly common for people to draw sigils on their bodies or putting it on the bottom of their shoes or like even, what have you, you know,
carving it into, wood on the door, carving it into stone around your house. There's so many ways to amplify the potency of a sigil.
Yeah, I would be interested to know if, taking up some type of divination maybe wouldn't help, at least in the way of being able to try to reach out to these spirits that you're wanting to speak with, your father, your grandmother,
Absolutely.
Tarot cards are a great way to do that because you do still have to put your energy in it, but there's ways you can, especially if you're already warded as a human being.
That's true. I mean, and it will become more and more difficult in that regard because anything that you initiate will have to penetrate through your protective, aspects.
Exactly. But also curious to hear, because I don't know if we've heard a few sleep paralysis happen.
Yes, and it's funny because a lot of times when people draw the sleep paralysis demon, like in comic strip or something, it'll oftentimes just be a hat, a shadow with a hat.
Yeah. So I'd love to know what your hat man looks like, because that, as we've gone through this journey, we really have categorized lots of different hat men, from the watching hat man to glowing red eye hat man.
We had one that spoke, which was very fascinating. Our understanding of Hat Man at the very beginning of this podcast was so specific, and we've heard so many stories of people's encounters.
Yeah, so this will go into that log of more malevolent Hat Man.
Right.
So, thank you for sending that one in. All right, so the next one is going to be from Trisha Cullen, who is one of our Parajunkies, and Trisha's on the live stream. So, Trisha, if you want to add anything while you're listening to this, please feel free to do so. I think I mentioned this actually in the last episode we just filmed. It's really fun to have the people on the live stream while we're reading their stories, because we've had people be able to give supplemental information live, while we're reading it, and it's very interesting. But nonetheless, so Trisha said, "Hi guys, I'm a big fan of the most haunted city on earth and a proud Parajunkie." Thank you, Trisha, for being a Parajunkie. She's always here with the live stream, so we love Trisha. But I want to share a paranormal experience that I had last year while visiting London, because it really shook me. So here it goes. Our favorite hotel is the Mayfair Chesterfield in the Mayfair district because it's so charming and quintessentially English. The hotel is located on Charles Street, a block from Berkeley. Interesting.
The spirit box just said Charles II.
Oh.
Who Charles Street is named after, I believe.
Ooh.
What?
Ooh, that's very creepy. Okay.
That's weird.
Yeah. Anywho, the hotel is located on Charles Street, a block from Berkeley Square. It was Christmas 2022, and we happened to be there when England was facing off against France in the World Cup. So my then husband insisted on going down the block to watch the game at the Footman Pub, which I had previously taken a photo of its exterior on a morning walk. And this is what it looks like.
Oh, it's a lovely pub.
Yes, a lovely little pub. We arrive for the game and enjoy a pint. There's Trisha.
Hey, pint drinkers.
I had to also, if you do have photos like this, please always feel free to send the photos with it, because it's...
Yes.
We love it.
Also send pet photos. We do love seeing your pets.
Yes. I had to use the restroom, so I asked the bartender where it was. I was instructed to go up to the 3rd floor, so I started heading up the stairs. As I hit the 4th floor landing, I became dizzy, but I found the restroom door and went inside anyways, because when a girl has to go, a girl has got to go. I walk into the restroom and immediately I get even dizzier, but here's the crazy part. Immediately after I sit down on the toilet, I see and feel the floor begin to shift and move just like tiny ocean ripples. Ooh. I kid you not.
Ooh.
In all of my paranormal encounters, I've never felt such dread. As I sat there scared and ready to cry, but fascinated at the same time, I can vividly remember trying to pee faster so I could get the heck out of there. I quickly splashed my hands with water, no time for soap, and headed out the door because the damn floor was still moving. I could still see and feel it happening, and I was beyond scared. So I flee the restroom as fast as I can. As I open the door and step out to the landing, the movement stopped immediately. I mean, immediately. I was gobsmacked. I mean, what did I just experience? I quickly ran down the stairs back to the bar where my husband is watching the game. I tried to tell him what I just experienced, but he blows me off. By the way, he is now my ex-husband, which is a great thing, trust me. I stopped the bartender and asked him about the bathroom, but he says he's never experienced anything like that before. A few days later, we head back home, but it wasn't until a few months later, while I was watching a television show, that I learned the significance of the location of that pub and realized that I wasn't hallucinating. The pub is around the corner from the most haunted house in all of London, 50 Berkeley Square. Oh. And that's when I put 2 and 2 together. 50 Berkeley Square and the Footman Pub share a wall. They literally touch each other. And the attic of 50 Berkeley Square is the most haunted place in that house. Here are some of the stories about it. And then she linked the stories. So I'll finish this and then we can get into that a little bit. So the story of this home is fascinating, and now you can stay there for only a mere £3,000 a week because it's available for short-term stays. Okay. Time for the most haunted city on earth to go to London, huh?
International, absolutely.
That would be very cool.
A week in the Berkeley, that would be amazing.
That would be so cool. This shows the actual layout of the house, but it doesn't show you its 4th floor attic. The White Home is on the corner of Charles Street and Berkeley Square. The Footman Pub is directly behind it and touches both the White Home and its next-door neighbor, 50 Berkeley Square. What are the odds of me having that experience in that bathroom and then learning it shares a wall with the most haunted house in London? Huh. I used a lot of restrooms during my stay, but that was the only restroom I experienced anything remotely paranormal. Have you ever heard of paranormal experiences like this? I often get dizzy when I feel spirit energy, but rocking and rolling restroom floor is a whole new level for me. Thanks for all you do for the paranormal field. You guys are the best. Take care, Trisha Cullen. Well, first off, thank you for all of the links to this, because honestly, we might do a whole episode on this. We could do a whole episode
on it, absolutely.
So actually, I might save some of that to do an episode, because you sent really, really good.
Yeah, we should do an episode on it for sure.
So, yeah. And then on the topic of your experience, I mean, there is sometimes objects and things I've heard that can cause people to feel disoriented like that.
Although, you know what, my initial kind of sensation about it, because it was such a very specific, they killed me. That's what just came through the spirit chat. They killed me and then killed me.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, God.
Hate crime. They killed me.
My uncle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, turn the volume up real fast.
Well, I mean, sorry. What I was saying was that the
spirit chat.
I'll just put that down.
Yeah.
What I was saying was that the level of the physical sensation of the floor rippling, the whole thing kind of moving around, sounds like you were on your way to a like a time slip or a shift in total perception. You're actually being pulled into another dynamic of reality, because the way you're describing it sounds like the actual location was shifting. It was changing around you, because the description you're making is like the rippling of the water. It sounds like it was trying to reconfigure to another place, perhaps in time, but also you were probably being introduced to things that were very likely linked to the Berkeley house. The haunting of that building might have been trying to present to you something that was larger scale. So you're being inundated all around by these kinds of disturbances, because it doesn't sound like a spirit specifically trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
It sounded like the location itself was trying to show you something and was trying to rearrange itself into a new, paradigm.
Honestly, that would be very interesting, to see if anybody has a similar experience in the attic of and it might be in these articles that you sent as well, but if people have a similar experience where they feel kind of a ripply sensation, a disorienting sensation, because
a lot of people, when things like that happen, it's almost immediate.
Yeah.
They go from like one place to another, but it's possible that that kind of disturbance requires a lot of buildup and a lot of, and it's possible that it sought you out specifically.
It's an interesting take, especially because London tends to get a lot of the notoriety of having time slips be common.
There's a famous street
yes.
In London, and I always forget it, but apparently many people have the experience of just turning the corner and then all of a sudden they're in the 1800s and they desperately try to find their way back.
I mean, I'm kind of jealous. That sounds pretty cool, but nonetheless, there's a table at the Sorrel Weed House in the slave quarters that's in the courtyard of the house. There's a table there that was built out of a ship door.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't put two and two together for a while there, but people would always stand by this table and feel like they were getting seasick. And they were like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on a rocking boat and like stuff like that. And then eventually somebody realized, maybe it has something to do with the table because it's from literally a ship.
A boat. That's true.
So,
and a lot of older buildings will have salvaged bits. Like all of River Street is, made from the ballast stones from the ships that came over, because they came over weighed down, but then they put product on the boat, so they had to take the ballast stone off of the ships to even out the weight, and then they turned it into the cobblestone streets of River Street. And so you've got all these crazy, jagged. I
think that's just being thrifty, if anything.
It is, but you can imagine that there are plenty of supernatural hijinks going on.
Yes, but I'm gonna read through these articles that you sent with your email, Trisha, and I think maybe the next episode we'll do it on 50 Berkeley Square, because that sounds fascinating.
Square. It sounds familiar, but I can't place it right off the top of my head.
Yeah, but nonetheless, super cool story. So thank you, Trisha, and thank you for joining us on the live stream. So next one we have is going to be from Stephanie, who actually just took my tour. So I got to meet Stephanie.
Oh, yeah. I met Stephanie, too. She was awesome.
Yes. All right. Hi there, Madison, JT, and Chris. First, I want to say how awesome you guys are, and I love the podcast. Thank you for being you and understanding the quirky and unusual people that this community is. I love all of you. I've been listening for a little over a year now, been a Parajunkie since January of this year, and just upgraded to Ultra Parajunkie. Yes, I love your podcast that much. LOL. Ooh. Thank you very much, Stephanie. She's very, very sweet. Anyway, before I get into the story, I was catching up on some episodes and was recently listening to the St. Patrick's Day episode where Chris was talking about pinching, and not sure why, where it might have come from. Being part Irish myself, my parents would tell me backgrounds of traditions and stories. Now, I wouldn't take this as fact, just as something my parents told me growing up. The green was to represent Catholicism, and the orange represented Protestants. Now, most of the history in Ireland was the majority Catholic, while a smaller population was Protestants. They have a history of conflict dating all the way back to the 16th century. So that I don't go off on a tangent and a crazy history lesson. The long and short of it is the Catholics would pinch the Protestants for humiliation's sake. Kind of their way of, well, that tracks, but kind of their way of drawing
Catholics
attention.
Catholics were known for inflicting pain on people who weren't Catholic.
But drawing adulterous women drawing attention, kind of like they would make an adulterous woman to wear a large A on her garment around town. Hope that helps. It was very interesting. Just a little background about me may be important to understand the story a bit. As a child, I was very open to the supernatural. I experienced pretty much all clair abilities, which at the time was very much looked down upon since I am Gen X. I grew up in a religious household, and they also did not believe in the supernatural as we know it now. It was considered spiritual, like only heaven versus hell. So you were either dealing with heavenly hosts or demonic presence. So being open to everything I saw was nearly impossible for my family to understand. Mostly now I am clair-sentient / clairaudient, but still experience others occasionally. The story is something I chose to keep to myself, except for maybe a select few. I have many, many, many stories to tell you, but this one has always boggled my mind. When I was about 14 years old, I lived in a small town in the state of Nevada. I lived in a trailer. Most did in this small town, LOL. Most of the yards did not have grass, only sand, so it was my job to clean up the yard after my dog, so we raked it, LOL. I was in my yard one afternoon doing my chore while my brother and sister were inside. It was a normal West Coast afternoon, so sweltering, LOL. I could hear the sounds of birds and the occasional insect when suddenly there was complete silence except for this sound of running. And not just one person, a lot. The only sound was the running. No sound of people out of breath or children laughing as they chased each other, just a lot of running feet. I heard it coming from the alleyway behind the trailer. I felt this deep foreboding feeling, but my curiosity was greater than my fear. I finally opened up my back gate that leads to the alleyway. Charging down the narrow alley was an unkempt group of kids, all boys. They had cut off jean shorts and no shirts. They headed right toward my direction. My fear was getting greater as they approached, but just before they reached me, they all suddenly dropped to the ground, passed out. I went towards the first kid and tried to wake him, but he didn't move. I should point out that all the kids looked normal, which is a creepy distinction that you have to make. But in a matter of seconds, there was another child that ran up to me and stopped directly in front of me, so close to me that our eyes were directly in front of each other. The strange thing is not the running, the kids passing out, or even that this kid just stood there. It was that it was what he looked like. He also had cut off jean shorts and no shirt, but he was albino with almost translucent skin, but definitely solid. He also had fiery red hair that seemed to blow strangely on his head, almost like it crawled and swayed. It was also very unkempt. The most disturbing thing was his eyes. They were black, but not the color black. It was almost as if they were black holes, voids. He said nothing. He just stood there face to face, staring at me in what seemed like hours. I could not blink or say a word. I finally was able to close my eyes in order to get up the courage to say something. But before I opened my eyes, I said, "Are you okay?" Opened my eyes, and without a sound, they were all gone. No sound, no footsteps, nothing. Just gone. The alleyway stretched out for at least a quarter of a mile. There was no way in the split second that I closed my eyes for at least 30 kids to just disappear. I ran both ways down the alleyway, around both corners, and saw nothing, no trace. The only footprints that were there in the sand were from the direction that they came and passed out by my back gate. Nothing before the entrance to the alleyway or past my back gate. I ran inside and asked my brother and sister if they had heard anything, and they said no. I checked the time and I had only been outside for 15 minutes, which seemed impossible because it felt like at least 45 minutes. To include me running up and down the alley looking for evidence. So I know this seems unreal, and I have never found anything about black-eyed children with fiery red hair or anything close to my experience. I don't share this with anyone because of how unrealistic this sounds, but it did happen. Curious to know what you all think and hopefully validate that I am not crazy, LOL. It's as vivid today in my 40s as it was then in my teens. I'm going to be sending many more stories in the future, including my alien experience and Ouija board experience as well. Stay spooky, y'all. Stephanie Wesson. And yes, it's okay to use my name. Cool. Very nice.
So I immediately thought Black-Eyed Kids.
Yeah.
But even before you had brought in the albino child, who by description is actually closer to the description of most people's encounters with Black-Eyed Kids. They often talk about unusually pale. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes they're in hoodies, so you don't see their hair. The fact that they're all in cutoff jean shorts raises like all kinds of questions about what exactly is happening in this instance. Because another thing that played in the back of my head was Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah.
This concept of Lost Boys. And then even like a redheaded, like leaderish character showing up also feels very Peter Pan-y. Which, and this becomes such an interesting thing too, is that oftentimes spirits will try to communicate with you in terms that will seem amenable to who they're coming to. So oftentimes, they will show up as fictional characters to bridge the gap between the unbelievable and what's happening right in front of you. So there are people who have experiences, and those experiences are like, that sounds like a literary reference. That sounds like a movie. That sounds like something from a movie or something to that effect. Oftentimes it is because the energy is trying to present itself in a way that your mind is amendable to. That will do various. It doesn't have to do all kinds of convincing if it looks like something that you could digest. However, 30 boys in jean shorts running
odd.
Is so odd. Because another thing that I kind of vaguely reminded me of before you actually encountered the kids was night marchers.
Oh, yeah.
The concept of like a regiment of spirits continuing their, protective stance. So I'd be interested to know the regionality. Are there any stories in the region of that type of distress, or what kinds of stories could you possibly uncover dealing with children? That's a good solid mystery.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that I can pull straight out of my mind that refers, although there are pieces that are like, oh, well, that's very similar to, certain elements that I've heard in other stories.
Yeah, it's what I thought about the cutoff shorts is that maybe because it was in Nevada, possibly, especially kids that would be a common thing.
It seems fairly common, yeah.
Yeah, so, I want to believe that depending on where you're experiencing a black-eyed kid, that they might change their outfits to appear like normal kids, even though obviously because they are not normal kids, they're not going to get it right because they didn't band together and be like, maybe we shouldn't all be shirtless and wearing cutoffs.
Right. Although it also kind of raises questions like, were you near maybe an indigenous reservation? Were you near a place where kids might have been rounded up and taken away? Jean shorts is such a specific thing that I'm like, was there something in the 70s that happened around there? Because I keep in my head going, well, what does that image really remind me of? Is there any historical thing that I can think of? And I just can't. I just can't come up with it. So it does have this kind of eerie notion, like further, what did these children look like? Did they have a specific ethnicity? Did they look alike? Did they look, were they a variety of ages? So I'm intrigued. Because the story by itself is just, wow, that's weird.
Ooh, that's an interesting question, Elle. Elle asks, can black-eyed kids be jinn?
Yes, that's a good question. And I would say absolutely. Because of the nature of what it's attempting to do, insinuate itself into your life and the way that it goes about it and the promise of exchange. Because it's asking you for something almost always. The children are almost always asking you for access to your life, to be let into your house, or let into your life, as it were. So, there's a lot of jinn properties. And what's interesting, and we should probably do a deep dive on like jinn lore, is the difference culturally in the jinn, which might show up in indigenous practices, the kinds of spirits that you encounter in, the American Southwest might have very similar bents as the jinn, because jinn are indifferent to good and evil. They have the ability to aid and cause harm. So that might be a worthwhile deep dive for a future episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was wondering that too. That's exactly what I was wondering.
That's super interesting. Courtney said, I wonder if they could have been victims of children's wilderness programs.
It was that kind of like, could it have been something where, all these kids were a part of some,
the troubled
organization.
Teen program.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with what that is there were these troubled teen programs where essentially parents were on their last rope with their kid, and so they're like, what'll toughen them up is sending them out into the woods with these random
survivalist nut kind of
like crazy adult that just takes a bunch of teenagers out into the woods and makes them hike for an entire day with very little water. So a lot of kids, there were multiple incidents where children would die in these camps in the care of these particular programs. So possibly, but I think also something But
at that scale too, you'd think that would be a story that everyone would know if there were like 30 kids who just perished.
Yeah.
Even if it was 30 kids over the course of like 10 years, still people would be like, there's something fishy about this program.
Right. But, the only other weird part about the story is usually when you hear people's black-eyed kids stories, I don't like that one. It just said open wide. I don't want to open. Oh God. Anyways, usually when you hear people's black-eyed kid stories, you have two kids.
Yeah, it's usually two kids. Absolutely.
And it's usually like a boy and a girl, or a lot of the stories are like a boy and a girl, and they are usually similar heights, and they're just like these creepy little like twins,
And also, intriguingly, is the idea that what you're really looking to is just the vacuous cavities of eyes rather than actual black eyes. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people will talk about black-eyed kids as having like a shine and glimmer in their black eye.
Like wearing...
it sounds like you were actually dealing with something different than a black-eyed kid simply because of the nature of the experience, especially since it didn't attempt anything. It didn't try. And, it's possible that just the falling down and playing dead drew you to them. It kind of got to the point where the pale one could kind of get very close to you. So there's a lot of like, this could be a fae trap. Ooh, this could be, trying to draw you into an area where it can get to you. And by your attempt to help, you might have triggered something. So there's a lot of things we could just kind of go on trying to figure out.
Still a very interesting story.
Very interesting.
Super creepy. It's terrifying. Yes,
the vacuous cavity-eyed kids.
Absolutely.
I believe we have room for one more.
All right.
Room for one more.
All right. So, thank you, Stephanie, for
thank you so much.
that. All right, next one. Let me make sure this person wants me to say their name. Okay. Oh, this is Zafir, one of our Parajunkies.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So, dear Chris, Madison, and JT, longtime listener, first time caller. Kidding. And, always wanted to say that. I've only just joined the Parajunkies after discovering your podcast 2 weeks ago. You guys are awesome. I drive roughly 10 hours a week, and your podcast has been my constant companion since discovering you.
Nice.
We love to be a part of your morning commute.
Noise.
I've never shared the following experiences and observations with anyone because nobody I knew would have believed them, taken them seriously, or would have questioned my sanity. Interesting. Now we have Richard the second.
Yeah, now Richard the second's making a show. A very British spirit chat.
I have several decades worth of various experiences, more or less, and after watching your show, my mind has opened to the idea that some of the experiences may not have been as coincidental or benign as originally perceived. Preface about me. I never considered myself to be particularly empathetic or clair-sentient. I've always felt grounded in science and that there is usually an explanation for phenomena, even if that explanation is because ghosts.
Because like ghosts?
Because ghosts.
Yes.
I accept that.
I accept that explanation too. I don't consider myself a skeptic because there are many things we still can't explain, so I don't truly discount anything. But there is contradiction. I'm an Aquarius, so I understand JT's quirkiness. I'm also an artist and tend to see things a bit differently. I've had a few clear predictive dreams about things in my own life and have always felt strong connections to structures like houses, barns, old buildings, and cars. People might scoff and say they're just soulless, inanimate objects, but I can't deny that I can sense life of sorts in these things and feel a sort of feedback when I interact with them. I was raised Catholic, but I recovered. Today, I'm a mildly green witch and tend toward deep introspection, and I absolutely love psychology. Now on to the meat of the meal. And also, just a comment on feeling the energy off of things like houses and structures and whatnot. I am a believer in the concept that things that we interact with constantly, like houses and cars and places where you're spending so much of your life in, you're going to leave behind that energy. And that is partially why I feel like you're picking up on it, is you're picking up all of that energy.
There's a whole field of psychometry and psychokinesis, not kinetic, being able to tell the history of an item by touching it or, knowing things. So there's enough precedent. I have to say that I'm having terrible deja vu.
Oh, really?
Like very intense deja vu.
Oh.
Ooh.
I don't know why. just
He's
putting that out
having a
there
premonition.
into the world.
Mm-hmm. He's turning into Nostradamus.
I don't think Nostradamus was sitting around going, I think this has happened before.
Maybe he
His whole thing was, this is going to happen next week.
Yes. Yeah. But, all right, on to the meat of the meal. I was a teenager back in the 80s. My father, mother, younger brother, and I lived in the North Dallas area. My father was a civil engineer, my mother a stay-at-home mom, and we moved from Houston to Dallas in 1983. My father was diagnosed with brain cancer in 1980 and felt we would have better opportunities in North Texas, which, goodness gracious, that is, that's hard. Mom had to go back to college to finish her degree so she could support us because we knew he was dying. Our Dallas home was nothing special, a small 3-bedroom cookie-cutter suburban home built in the 60s. It backed up to a limestone-based creek and had a lot of foundation problems. Well, I just based off of the fact that you have a limestone creek up against your property.
Yeah.
I can bet that you probably had a little bit of experience.
Limestone famously being a conduit for supernatural phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. So
did we not read this before?
No.
I swear to God, I every word you're saying, I've definitively heard before. So
Wow.
it's bothering me. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
No.
The
Interesting.
episode's going to be called Chris Gets Crippling Deja Vu.
It's eerie.
But unrelated to this story, but maybe worth mentioning, there were 2 huge old trees in the backyard near the creek, a pecan and a Bois d'Arc, an Osage orange, that I enjoyed visiting and would occasionally camp out and spend the night under.
The Osage tree. Yes, we have read this. Tell me, we've read this before.
I don't recall
What?
this.
No, I don't remember this.
Okay, God.
This is crippling.
What's going to happen next? Maybe can you guess what's going to happen next?
Well, I remember looking up Osage tree because of this.
Oh,
What?
interesting.
Keep going.
Okay. I found an old iron horseshoe and felt inclined to nail it to the pecan.
Yes, we've absolutely read this before.
There's no way.
No, we haven't.
Oh, God.
No, we
Okay,
haven't.
keep going.
Okay. So the Osage orange tree was a dark, unfriendly tree, spooky and difficult to approach, which is exactly why I did so. I wasn't going to let a tree tell me where I could go. Being a young teenage girl, I argued with my father a lot. Due to the cancer, he was losing his reasoning capacity, and I was a hormonal, oppositional little snot. Father trying to put his foot down, daughter pushing back. I came to learn in later years that I was just like him personality-wise. There were a lot of emotions, hurt, anger, and frustration thrown around the house in those years. My mother was unavailable while she was at school, and my younger brother, 2 years my junior, would lock himself in his room until the emotion storms passed. He was the good kid. I was the troublemaker. In 1985, my father succumbed to the disease and passed. He was not home when he died. He fell into a coma and died at the hospital. I was at home that night. I had a feeling something was off when I went to bed. Something around midnight, something woke me up. I have very poor vision and have always been night blind, so I felt rather than saw a presence near my bed. It was a warm, comforting presence. I remember knowing in that moment that my dad was gone. The next morning, I learned that he had died shortly before the experience I had. I wasn't disturbed, just took it as par for the course and went about my life. I was 15 years old at the time and far too accustomed to expecting death to come than anyone should at that age. Years passed. I went off to college, University of North Texas, where I lived in haunted Bruce Hall, but I never saw the resident ghosts Wanda or Boiler Room Bill. I would love to hear about Boiler Room Bill. But then afterwards got an apartment in Dallas.
Have you heard this?
Yes, I'm now realizing that I've read this email. I think it was sent to me directly.
Yes. So she acted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was literally like losing my mind here because I'm like, oh, Boiler Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I read this email because it was sent to my private email address. Because I'm like, I know this story. I know what's going on. I know what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She had initially sent all of us personally this email and then resent it to Ghostmail.
Okay.
So that's exactly it. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh. That was chilling.
Now that we took 5 years off of Chris's life,
I know. My brain was really having a hard time.
But my brother graduated college and moved to Pacific Northwest, where he still resides. Mom stayed in the house. In 1999, I was engaged to be married, and my mother remarried. She gave our old house to my fiance and I, and she moved into her new husband's home. Our old house was in pretty rough shape from age by then, and my new husband hated it. He never had anything kind to say about it and could be quite rude. It's interesting to note at this point that he was a devout Presbyterian. But we had the foundation repaired and the floors and roof replaced, and it was repainted inside and out, but no construction work beyond that. I loved the house, but I was also accustomed to its eccentricities. My husband and I lived there for almost 4 years. During that time, I had what may be defined as paranormal experiences. If my husband experienced any, he never admitted it. One that I had was frequent sleep paralysis, which was something that had never plagued me before that time. I would lay awake on my back and feel a presence pressing on me, like large hands on my chest and stomach. The mattress springs audibly creaked as the pressure intensified. I was curious about this, so I would relax and just let it happen, and it would stop. If it wasn't sleep paralysis, it was lucid dreams, always very similar to each other, where I was in the house, in bed, and nothing and everything in its place. My husband loudly snoring next to me, but something else was there as well. A dark presence standing in the doorway, or at the foot of the bed, or over me. I remember thinking at it to go away because I was unable to speak. Sometimes, instead of a dark presence, it was a large gathering of massive spiders above the bed.
Nope. Don't like that.
JT would lose his mind.
I would lose my mind.
But, where are the large spiders? Okay. Yeah. Now this would terrify me. I would turn my head away, breathe, and center myself until the dream went away. I also inherited several pieces of old furniture from my paternal grandmother. During this time, this included a large lamp that sat in her living room for over 40 years. My grandfather would read to me under that lamp when I was a little girl. I put it in my living room. Not long after getting that lamp to the house, it would turn itself on and off. The lamp worked fine. The cord and bulb were fine. It has been well cared for. Oh, that's creepy. Hello.
What?
It said behind you.
Oh. It just said behind you. Behind me.
Courtney said the oh hell nah button is required.
Yeah.
So, the lamp had been well cared for. There was no reason for it to do this. It usually happened when I was sitting under it and reading. The first time it turned itself off, I turned it back on, and after a few minutes, it turned itself off again. I turned it back on, and again, it turned off a third time. I slammed my book shut and yelled, "Oh, come on!" more out of frustration than anything, and the lamp came back on. It did this a handful of times over the next couple of years. Nobody else experienced it, just me. All I had to do was fuss, and it would stop. The foundation repair didn't do much, and the house continued to shift. I didn't pay much attention to doors opening and closing on their own or when things would fall off of the counters. I chalked it up as gravity and physics. I may have simply been in denial. Then the flies happened. Big black flies, horsefly types.
Ooh.
They appeared one morning in the guest bathroom, which was the one I had always used, emerging from the ceiling vent, dozens of them, all... Oof. The same massive size. There was an ungodly stench of rot accompanying the flies.
Goodness.
The stench and the flies came on slowly over a couple of days, building to a creepy swarm crawling the walls and ceiling. They flew and buzzed loudly. We explored the attic and vents above the bathroom, expecting to find a past tense raccoon or squirrel, but we couldn't find anything. It might have been somewhere we couldn't reach. I sprayed the flies with Raid every day for a week, and they finally dissipated. I had read the Amityville Horror when I was younger. I amused myself by imagining some demon might have been trying to take hold and was just getting a face full of pyrethrum. But it's interesting to note that at roughly the same time, I told my husband that I didn't think we were working out, and I wanted to discuss separation. Not a week later, his job relocated him to Omaha, and I decided maybe all we needed was a change of scene. The house was put on the market after being in our family for 20 years. We moved into a brand new house in Omaha. My grandmother's lamp had been badly packed by the movers and broke in the move.
Huh. Dang.
It was smashed beyond repair. I was upset by this, but strangely enough, there were no more overt paranormal experiences, at least in the 6 years we were in Omaha. No sleep paralysis or lucid dreams, no flies, no feeling of anything there except us. There were no trees in the yard, nothing. It was as if what happened in Dallas stayed in Dallas. As for the Dallas house, I don't know if there was anything tied to the lamp or moved into the house when Dad was sick or was already there and not happy about me bringing my husband there. So many variables. I know the house took 18 months to sell, and it finally went to an investor who fixed it up for rent. That was 20 years ago. it's still there and people are living in it. So I can only assume that whatever it was either left or followed me and realized I wasn't having any of it. My husband and I have long since divorced. I'm back in Dallas again with my dogs, living in a friendly and easygoing 40-year-old house near the lake. That's something shadowy. There's something shadowy residing in the ancient oak tree in my backyard, but that's a telling for another day. Thank you for reading. Stay awesome. Stay spooky. Zephyr.
Cool.
Ooh, well, that was creepy nonetheless. And multiple layers of...
Oh, absolutely.
Hauntings I don't necessarily think are associated with one another.
Right. You have so many elements going on. I do think that the lamp very likely had a spirit attached to it, and,
yes.
and in its destruction, its ability to communicate with you was cut off. I do believe that the location, those two specific trees, the limestone creek, all contribute to the heightened supernatural sensation of the place. So yeah, I think that it also being the house of grief certainly creates the opening for supernatural interference in your lives. It does sound like that's kind of what you have on multiple levels. It does sound like you're not dealing with a single entity trying to communicate. You're basically in a receiver getting, signals from all directions.
Yeah, the sleep paralysis and the flies, I feel like, would be the most closely associated with one another.
Yeah, I would dare say that the flies do present a problem because there are demonic presences that are heralded by flies. Specific demons that do... they're accompanied by rotting smell. They're accompanied by flies. And that sounds like, given the age of heightened emotional distress, you were ripe for that kind of infestation, that kind of demonic presence in your life.
Yeah, so... but the fact that it didn't follow you, it tells me it wasn't like an attachment sort of thing.
It was anchored.
Yeah.
Although the fact that the lamp broke in the move.
That is interesting.
Is interesting because one of the things that sticks out about that notion is that the lamp, because the location had enough energy to allow the lamp to be as essential, when you're trying to pull the lamp away from the energy source that it broke, that kind of reinforces the idea that the lamp wished it could stay where it had the most voice. If it moves to another place, it may never have as much energy to give it its will, whatever the will may be. So the fact that it broke in the move, it does suggest, and then none of the stuff followed you, none of the attachment could happen. It does suggest that the lamp does have significance in the story.
Yeah, nonetheless, very fascinating. And definitely send in the story about what you're referring to with your oak tree, because that's compelling. But thank you all so much for sending in your ghost mails. I hope that you enjoyed listening to everybody's stories today. If you have a ghost story you want to send to us, you can send it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. Also, if you want to follow us on other forms of platforms, we are on everything: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the good stuff under Haunted City Podcast. So you can keep up with us on all those platforms as well. But with that, y'all, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.